Under the glowing silver sky of planet Theralis, a young human engineer named Aaron walked through the quiet marketplace where alien merchants were closing their stalls for the night. He had been stationed here for 3 months, helping rebuild the damaged power grid after the last ion storm. Most of the locals avoided him, whispering about the strange human who smiled too easily, who fixed things no one else dared to touch. But one pair of eyes never failed to follow him, though she always turned away when he noticed. Her name was Lyra. She belonged to the native Therali race. Tall, slender, with soft blue skin that shimmered faintly in moonlight. She was assigned as Aaron's assistant when the human delegation arrived, but she barely spoke beyond what was necessary. Her tone was always cold and she never met his gaze for long. To her people, humans were unpredictable, emotional, and far too direct. Yet every time Aaron smiled at her, something strange stirred inside her chest. Something she didn't understand and didn't want to admit. That evening, Aaron stayed late to repair a damaged energy conduit near the settlement's edge. Sparks danced as he worked, his sleeves rolled up and face streaked with grease. Lyra stood nearby holding a glowing toolkit, pretending not to watch him. The human hummed softly to himself, an earth tune she didn't recognize. Finally, unable to stay silent, she said in a sharp voice, "You're reckless, human. You don't even wear protection while working." Aaron looked up, smiled that same gentle smile, and said, "If I did, I wouldn't see the stars." She frowned. "Stars, what does that mean?" He chuckled softly, brushing dust from his hands. "It means sometimes you have to get a little burned to see something beautiful." For a moment, she just stared at him. There was a quiet strength in his words that unsettled her. Her people valued logic, distance, and calm precision. Yet here was a man covered in soot and still smiling like the world couldn't break him. When he caught her staring, she quickly turned away. "Don't look at me, human," she said suddenly, her voice trembling in a way even she didn't expect. Aaron paused, his expression softening. He didn't move closer. He didn't tease. He just spoke quietly as if sharing a secret. "You're too beautiful not to." Her heart seemed to stop. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not among her kind, not ever. Beauty wasn't a word her people used. They spoke of symmetry, of function, of strength. But the way he said it carried warmth she couldn't ignore. She took a step back, confused by the strange warmth spreading through her chest. "You humans use strange words," she murmured, her eyes fixed on the sand. "You see things that aren't there." Aaron smiled again, softer this time. "Or maybe you don't see what's right in front of you." The night wind carried silence between them. Lyra looked up at him under the twin moons, his brown eyes reflecting the light like still water. Something about his presence made her feel seen in a way that frightened her. He didn't look at her as a technician, a helper, or an alien. He looked at her as if she were a person who mattered. She turned away, whispering, "You should go. The curfew will start soon." He nodded, packing up his tools. "All right. But tomorrow, I'll need your help reattaching the southern circuits. Only you seem to know how they behave when the field shifts." Her lips twitched slightly. "You remember my instructions?" "Every one of them," he said, slinging his pack over his shoulder. "It's hard to forget something when the person teaching it looks like you." Lyra froze again, speechless. She wanted to argue, to correct him, to say that emotions had no place in work. But her voice wouldn't come. Instead, she simply watched him walk away, his silhouette fading between the tall metal towers and drifting mist. When she returned to her quarters that night, she found herself staring at the reflection in the polished glass wall. Her own face looked unfamiliar, her cheeks faintly colored, her eyes softer than usual. She touched her skin and whispered to the empty room, "Beautiful." The word felt strange on her tongue, but it lingered there. The next morning, she tried to keep her distance. But as soon as she saw him by the southern power lines whistling that same gentle tune, she felt her resolve weaken. He waved at her cheerfully, calling out, "Morning, Lyra. Ready to save this planet's circuits again?" She sighed, pretending to be annoyed. "You humans are always too loud. And you aliens," he replied with a grin, "are always pretending you don't like it." Despite herself, her lips curved into the smallest smile. She turned away quickly so he wouldn't notice, but he did. And though neither said anything, something changed between them that day. Something that would slowly turn into a story whispered across stars. The morning light on Theralis was soft and blue, spreading across the hills like mist. Aaron was already at work, his hand steady as he rewired a damaged relay. Lyra approached quietly, holding a set of crystal tools she had adjusted overnight. She told herself she was here because of duty, not because she wanted to see him again. But when he turned, smiled, and said, "Good morning, partner." She felt her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. She handed him the tools without meeting his eyes. "You should be careful," she said. "Yesterday, your method was dangerous." He laughed lightly. "I survived, didn't I? Besides, you were watching. I figured you'd save me if anything went wrong." Her eyes widened. "You assume too much, human." "Maybe," he replied with a grin. "But I like to believe there's kindness even where others say there isn't." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of energy lines filled the silence. Lyra finally crouched beside him, her long fingers adjusting the circuit plates. She worked with precision, her movements graceful and calm. Aaron watched her for a second, admiring how focused she became when she worked. "You make it look easy," he said softly. She didn't look up. "It is easy when you understand how energy flows." "It's all about balance." "Balance," Aaron repeated. "That's what I need when I talk to you." She stopped for a moment, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said with a small smile, "I never know if you're going to correct me, ignore me, or walk away." She blinked slowly, surprised by his honesty. "Maybe I'm still deciding what to do with you," he chuckled. "That's fair. I'll try to survive until you decide." Lyra shook her head, but a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She tried to hide it, but he saw it anyway. For the rest of the morning, they worked in quiet rhythm. He handed her tools before she asked, and she adjusted the circuits before he explained what was wrong. Without meaning to, they had begun to move as one. When the power grid finally came alive, a faint hum spread across the valley. Blue light rippled through the cables, lighting up the small town below. Aaron threw his hands up and laughed. "We did it!" Lyra looked at the glowing horizon, feeling something she hadn't felt before. Pride mixed with warmth. "We stabilized it," she said softly. He turned toward her. "No, you stabilized it. I just followed your lead." Her eyes met his for the first time in a long while. The sincerity in his gaze made her heart beat faster. She looked away quickly, trying to hide the feeling. "You speak too many unnecessary words, human." "Maybe," he said quietly, "but I only say the ones I mean." Later that day, a small group of local elders arrived to inspect the restored system. They congratulated Lyra but gave Aaron only brief nods. Humans were still strangers here, tolerated, not trusted. As they left, one of them whispered something in their language that made Lyra flinch. Aaron noticed. "What did they say?" She hesitated. "They said humans bring storms wherever they go." He nodded slowly. "Maybe they're right. We do bring storms, but sometimes storms clear the air." She stared at him, unsure how to respond. His words stayed with her long after the elders left. She found herself walking beside him as the sun set, the light painting the sky in orange and violet. "Why did you come here, Aaron?" she asked suddenly. He smiled softly. "Because I wanted to help. After the storm destroyed your colonies, most of my team thought it was too dangerous to come here. I didn't. You risked your life for people you don't know?" He shrugged. "Someone once did the same for me. I guess it's just who we are." Lyra looked at him with new eyes. His species was known for being stubborn, emotional, unpredictable, but maybe those same traits were what made them brave. She couldn't deny that every time he spoke, something inside her wanted to understand him more. When they reached the observation deck overlooking the valley, the lights below shimmered like stars on the ground. Aaron leaned against the railing, watching them with quiet satisfaction. Lyra stood beside him, her hands clasped in front of her. After a long silence, she said, "You still look at me the same way." He turned, smiling. "Should I stop?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "I told you not to." He looked at her for a moment, then spoke softly. "And I told you why I can't." The silence that followed was deep but not uncomfortable. The wind carried the scent of metallic rain, and somewhere in the distance thunder rolled softly. She didn't move away this time. When the first drops began to fall, she looked up at the sky and then back at him. "You were right," she said quietly. "Storms do clear the air." He smiled again, that same easy human smile that somehow made the cold world of Theralis feel warm. And though she didn't say it aloud, Lyra finally understood that maybe this human wasn't reckless after all. Maybe he was exactly what her quiet world needed. The following morning began with dark clouds over Theralis. The storm season had arrived early, and heavy winds swept through the colony. Aaron and Lyra were ordered to inspect the northern relay tower, which had gone silent overnight. It was the highest and most unstable structure in the valley, standing between the mountain ridges. Most locals refused to go near it during storms, but Aaron simply said, "If that tower goes down, half the colony loses power. We can't let that happen." Lyra followed reluctantly. The sky above roared with electric light, the air heavy with static energy. She walked behind him, her steps slow, her mind restless. Since that night on the observation deck, his words had refused to leave her. She had begun to dream of him. Strange, warm dreams where his eyes were the only light in the dark. When they reached the base of the tower, the wind almost knocked Aaron off his feet. He tightened his grip on the safety rail and grinned. "Still think I'm reckless?" he shouted over the wind. Lyra steadied herself beside him. "Yes, and you are proving it again." He laughed, but his laughter was swallowed by thunder. They climbed carefully, one level at a time. The metal groaned under the storm's weight. Halfway up, Lyra noticed one of the stabilizer cables had snapped. She pointed to it. "If that one breaks, the tower will collapse." Aaron glanced at the gauge. "I can fix it." "Hold the safety line for me." She grabbed his harness, her heart pounding. Rain streamed down her face. "Be quick, human." He worked fast, attaching a new cable and sealing the conduit. But then the tower shuddered again, and a bright bolt of lightning struck the nearby ridge. The shockwave threw him off balance. For a terrifying moment he slipped, hanging only by the harness she held. "Aaron," she cried, gripping the line with all her strength. He dangled in midair, feet kicking against the storm. "I'm okay. Don't let go." "I'm not letting go," she shouted, pulling him up inch by inch. The metal beneath her feet shook violently, but she didn't stop. The rain blurred everything, yet all she could see was his face, calm, trusting her completely. When she finally pulled him back onto the platform, they both collapsed, breathing hard. She was shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. "You could have died," she said, her voice breaking. He looked at her, water dripping from his hair, and smiled weakly. "You saved me. Again." She turned away, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. "You humans are impossible. You risk everything without thinking." He sat up slowly. "No. I risk things because I believe some things are worth it." She looked at him, her chest tight. "And what was worth it this time?" He hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "You," her breath caught. The storm seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of rain. She stared at him, speechless. He didn't look away. He didn't laugh or tease. He just waited, calm and sincere. She turned her face toward the clouds. "You don't understand what you're saying," she whispered. "I'm not like you. My kind does not feel as you do." "Maybe not," Aaron said gently, "but you held on to me like someone who does." That silence between them was heavy, filled with something neither of them could name. Then another crack of thunder echoed nearby, and Aaron stood, extending a hand. "Come on. Let's finish before the storm eats this place." She took his hand without thinking. His skin was warm, even in the cold rain. Together they climbed to the top, sealed the final junction, and reactivated the relay. When the system came alive, blue light flashed across the storm clouds, reflecting in her eyes. As they descended, the wind softened. The storm began to drift away. At the bottom, Lyra stopped and looked up at the tower, then at him. "You are strange, human," she said quietly. "You laugh in danger and you smile when you should not." He grinned. "Maybe that's how we survive." She tilted her head. "Or maybe that's why you fall so easily." He laughed again, and for the first time she didn't look away. The corners of her mouth curved just slightly, almost a smile, almost not. That evening, back at the base, the commander commended their bravery. Lyra barely heard his words. Her mind was elsewhere, on the moment her hands held his life, on the warmth that had spread through her when she refused to let go. When the others left, she found him sitting near the generator, drying his tools. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "Aaron," she said softly. He turned. "Yeah?" She hesitated, then stepped closer. "When you said I was worth it, did you mean that?" He looked into her eyes and nodded once. Every word. Lyra lowered her gaze, her voice barely a whisper. Then maybe. I am starting to believe you. Aaron didn't speak. He only smiled. That same quiet human smile that had begun to melt the walls she'd built her whole life. Outside, the last drops of rain fell gently, and for the first time since arriving on Theralis, Lyra felt the world grow calm. The following week, the air in the colony grew tense. Rumors spread that the Council of Theralis was preparing to end all cooperation with the humans. Some said the humans were changing the balance of their planet. Others whispered that they were dangerous. The smiles that once greeted Aaron and his team began to fade. Even the children stopped waving when he passed. Aaron tried to ignore it, but Lyra could see the unease in his eyes. They still worked together each day, but there was a quiet heaviness between them. Every word spoken by others seemed to build a wall neither of them could see. One afternoon, while checking the stabilizers near the western ridge, Aaron asked, "Do you believe them, Lyra? Do you think we're dangerous?" She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Humans bring change," she said softly, "and change frightens my people. They believe peace means keeping everything the same." He nodded slowly. "Back home, we used to think that too. But sometimes peace isn't silence. Sometimes it's learning to live through the noise." Lyra thought about that. His words always seemed simple, but they carried a strange weight. "You speak as if you've lost something before," she said quietly. Aaron smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." He didn't explain further, and she didn't ask. As they continued their work, a small patrol of Theralis guards approached. Their armor gleamed under the sun, and their leader, a tall officer named Vareth, glared at Aaron. "You are not authorized to be in this zone," he said sharply. Aaron raised his hands calmly. "We're fixing the relay. It was unstable." Vareth's eyes shifted to Lyra. "You're working with him again." Lyra's voice was steady. "Yes, by command of the Council's engineering order." "That order may soon be revoked," Vareth said coldly. "It would be wise to remember where your loyalty lies." He turned and walked away, his guards following. Aaron let out a quiet sigh. "Friendly guy." Lyra frowned, watching the soldiers disappear. "He is from my sector. He doesn't trust outsiders." "And what about you?" Aaron asked softly. "Do you still think of me as an outsider?" She hesitated. The answer didn't come easily. "I did," she admitted. "But now when I see you, I don't think of human or alien. I just see someone who refuses to give up." Aaron smiled, but before he could speak, the relay behind them began to spark violently. The wind picked up, howling through the cables. Lyra reacted first, running to shut down the system, but a surge of power burst through the controls. Aaron lunged forward, pulling her away just as the panel exploded in a flash of blue light. They fell to the ground together, the blast ringing in their ears. For a moment, everything was white and silent. When the noise faded, Aaron groaned and looked over. Lyra was lying beside him, her eyes wide in shock. "Are you all right?" he asked. She blinked slowly. You pulled me away?" "Couldn't let you take the hit," he said with a grin, though his arm was bleeding. She sat up quickly, her voice trembling. "You're hurt." "It's fine," he said, trying to laugh, but his voice was weak. Lyra pressed her hand against his wound, focusing her energy. Her people had limited healing ability, using vibrations from their inner core to close small injuries. As a faint glow passed from her hand, Aaron's breathing steadied. When it was done, she pulled her hand back, looking shaken. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You risked your life again." Aaron looked at her gently. "And you saved it. Seems we're even now." She didn't smile. "No," she said softly. "We're not." Back at the base, word spread quickly about the explosion. Some accused Aaron of causing it on purpose, saying he wanted to test alien systems. The council demanded an investigation. Lyra defended him fiercely, saying he had saved her life, but most wouldn't listen. That night, she found him sitting alone near the landing bay, looking up at the stars. His shoulder was bandaged, and his expression was tired but calm. "They want you to leave," she said quietly. He nodded. "I heard. I told them the truth," she said. "But they don't care. They only see a human near a broken relay." Aaron smiled faintly. "I'm used to being misunderstood." Lyra stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. "If you leave, they will think they were right about you. And if I stay? They might see you as a threat." He looked at her then, really looked, and said softly, "What do you see, Lyra?" She froze. The answer was already in her heart, but the words were hard to say. Finally, she whispered, "I see someone I don't want to lose." The wind moved between them, carrying the faint hum of the colony lights. Aaron didn't speak. He just reached out and touched her hand gently, not to claim, not to demand, but to let her know he understood. For a long moment, neither moved. And in that quiet space between fear and courage, they both knew something had changed forever. The next morning, the colony buzzed with tension. News of the explosion had spread far beyond the engineering sector. Some claimed Aaron had tampered with the relay to gain control of Theralis technology. Others said the storm had caused it. The truth didn't matter anymore. The humans were being blamed. Lyra stood before the council chamber, her hands clenched tightly. The tall stone hall shimmered with faint blue light, and every voice inside carried across the polished walls. Aaron stood beside her, silent, his uniform slightly torn from the accident. He looked calm, but Lyra could feel his unease. The High Counselor, a stern figure named Marin, raised his voice. "Human, you admit you were at the Western Relay when the explosion occurred?" "Yes," Aaron said evenly. "We were repairing it together. The charge built up too fast. Yet only your readings show interference," Marin said coldly. "Our records were clean before your arrival." Lyra stepped forward. "That's not true," she said firmly. "The power lines were unstable since the last storm. He fixed what no one else could." The room fell silent. Marin turned his sharp gaze toward her. "You defend him too quickly, Lyra. Are you certain your emotions are not clouding your logic?" She met his eyes without fear. "Logic is not ignoring truth, Counselor. I was there. He saved me." Whispers spread through the chamber. The counselor leaned back in his chair. "Then you admit your loyalty may be divided?" "My loyalty," she said, her voice steady, "is to what is right." Aaron glanced at her, a faint warmth in his eyes. He wanted to speak, but he knew her courage needed its moment. The council finally dismissed them for the day, saying the investigation would continue. Guards escorted them out, their expressions hard. Outside, the air was heavy and quiet. Lyra stopped walking once they reached the corridor. "They won't listen," she said, her voice low. "They've already decided what they want to believe." Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let them believe what they want. We'll prove the truth another way." She turned toward him. "How? They control everything." He smiled faintly. "Then we find what they missed. Machines don't lie." That night, under the pale moons, they returned secretly to the damaged relay site. The wind was cold and the sand carried faint static in the air. Aaron knelt near the wreckage, scanning the wires with a portable reader. "Look," he said quietly, showing her the display. "There's an extra frequency here. Not human, not your system either. Someone overloaded it intentionally." Lyra's eyes widened. "But who would—" "Someone who wanted this to happen," Aaron said. "To turn us against each other." They exchanged a long look. The pieces were starting to fit. The council's quick judgment, the soldiers' warnings, the strange interference readings. Someone had wanted him to take the blame. Suddenly, a shadow moved among the broken metal. Lyra tensed. "Someone's here." Before they could react, two Theralis soldiers stepped into the open, their weapons raised. One of them was Vareth, the officer who had warned her earlier. His expression was cold. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "The council will hear of this." Aaron stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. "We're only collecting data. You can see for yourself." "I see enough," Vareth said sharply. "The human tampers again and you help him." "I warned you, Lyra. You've forgotten who you are." Her voice trembled, but she didn't step back. "No, Vareth. I've remembered what matters. Truth." Vareth's face darkened. "The council will not forgive this betrayal." Aaron's tone was calm but firm. "You want the truth? Take the data, scan it. You'll see who's really responsible." Vareth hesitated, then snatched the device from Aaron's hand. His eyes scanned the screen. The readings glowed clear, a foreign signal logged just seconds before the explosion. His expression shifted slightly, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. This can't be right," he muttered. Lyra stepped forward. "It is right. Someone set us up." Before he could respond, another bolt of lightning struck nearby, shaking the ground. The soldiers looked uneasy. Aaron grabbed Lyra's arm. "We should go. The storm's back." They ran through the sand, the wind howling behind them. When they reached the base, Aaron turned to her, breathing hard. Now they'll have to listen. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide but hopeful. You think he'll tell the truth? Aaron nodded. He saw the data himself. It's not about trust anymore, and it's about proof. For the first time in days, Lyra smiled faintly. You're always too calm even when everything falls apart. He chuckled softly. Maybe because I finally have someone worth staying calm for. Her heart skipped, but she didn't reply. She simply looked at him, this strange human who risked everything for honesty, who smiled in storms, who made her believe there could be more between their worlds than fear. Far above them, thunder echoed across the valley, but the sound no longer felt threatening. It felt like a promise that change was coming. And this time, neither of them would face it alone. The next day began with silence inside the human quarters. Most of Aaron's team had already packed their things, waiting for the council's final decision. The sky over Theralis was dark again, heavy with storm clouds, as if the planet itself could feel the weight of what was coming. Lyra stood outside the restricted zone, waiting for a message that never came. Her heart refused to rest. Vareth had promised to present the data, but something inside her told her he wouldn't. Too much pride, too much anger. She decided to find out herself. As she entered the records hall, the guards stopped her, but one quiet glance from her was enough to make them hesitate. Lyra was known for her calm authority. She had repaired more of Theralis' energy systems than anyone in her sector. Inside the archive room, she searched through the council logs. Each file glowed faintly on the crystal display. After several minutes, she found it, the energy record from the relay explosion. She stared at it in disbelief. The file had been altered. The interference signature was missing. Someone had deleted the evidence. Her pulse quickened. They're hiding it, she whispered. Before she could copy the data, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned sharply, and there stood Vareth. His eyes were cold, but beneath them was a shadow of guilt. You shouldn't be here, he said. You changed the file, she replied, her voice calm but sharp. You erased the truth, Vareth's jaw tightened. I did what I was ordered to do. The council believes humans will destroy us. They needed proof, or something close enough. And you gave it to them, Lyra said bitterly. He stepped closer. You don't understand, Lyra. The humans have technology beyond ours. The council fears they will stay and take control. I am protecting our world. By lying? She asked quietly. By framing the one person who risked his life for us? Vareth hesitated. You've changed, Lyra. You speak like them now. She met his gaze steadily. Maybe I learned something from them. From him. Before he could answer, an alarm echoed through the corridor. A voice announced, unauthorized breach in data sector. Guards to level 3. Lyra backed away. If you stop me now, the truth dies here. Vareth's eyes flickered with conflict, but he didn't move. Go, he said at last, his voice low. Before I changed my mind, she didn't wait. She ran through the corridor, clutching the recovered data crystal in her hand. Outside, the storm had broken, lightning flashing across the valley. The wind tore at her cloak as she sprinted toward the human outpost. Aaron was standing near the landing pad when she arrived, drenched and breathless. He turned quickly. Lyra, what happened? She held up the crystal. Proof the explosion wasn't your fault. Someone altered the data. He took it carefully, his eyes narrowing. Can we show this to the council? She shook her head. Not yet. If we go free now, they'll destroy it again. We need to broadcast it through the planetary channel. Everyone will see the truth, Aaron nodded. Then let's move before they realize what's missing. Together they ran to the communication tower. The storm raged around them, lightning lighting the sky like torn silver. Inside the tower, systems flickered. Aaron connected the crystal and began decoding the file. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes scanning the monitors. Suddenly the door burst open. Vareth entered with 2 guards. Enough, he shouted. You can't do this. Aaron didn't stop working. You want to keep lying to your people? Vareth raised his weapon. You'll destroy everything. Lyra stepped between them. No, Vareth, you will. Truth doesn't destroy and fear does. The guards hesitated. They looked at her, then at Aaron, then at the lightning outside. The air smelled like metal and rain. Finally, Vareth lowered his weapon slightly. You think this will change anything? He said bitterly. Aaron looked up, meeting his eyes. Maybe not today, but one day, they'll remember who tried to tell the truth. He pressed the final command. The transmission activated. Across Theralis, every screen, every device began to show the real footage. The signal that proved someone had tampered with the relay long before the humans arrived. The guard stepped back in shock. Fareth's face hardened, but he didn't move to stop it. Lyra watched the light spread across the sky like dawn breaking after a long night. "It's done," she whispered. Aaron turned to her, exhausted but smiling. "You did it, Lyra." She shook her head gently. "No, we did it." Outside, the thunder faded. For the first time in many days, the storm began to lift. The air grew still, and the stars slowly appeared between the clouds. In that quiet, standing side by side, they both understood that truth had a cost, but it was one they were willing to pay. The morning after the broadcast, Theralis was silent. The people had seen everything: the erased data, the foreign signal, and the proof that humans were innocent. Across the colonies, whispers spread like wind through grass. For the first time, the doubt wasn't about the humans. It was about their own leaders. Lyra stood on the balcony of the council tower, watching the first sunlight break through the clouds. The storm had finally passed, leaving the air clear and still. Below her, citizens gathered in small groups, talking softly. Some pointed toward the sky where the human ships waited. There was confusion, but there was also something new in their eyes, an understanding. Behind her, the heavy doors opened. Aaron walked in, looking tired but calm. His uniform was torn at the sleeve, his face marked by sleepless hours. Yet he smiled when he saw her. "I heard the council called for an emergency meeting." She nodded. "They want to restore the alliance." The broadcast reached every settlement. He stepped beside her, leaning on the railing. "That's good news." "You did it," Lyra shook her head. "No, Aaron, we did it. But they will not forgive easily. Some still fear humans." He looked out at the horizon where the twin suns were rising. Fear fades. It just takes time. They stood in silence for a while, the wind brushing past them. For the first time, there was no distance between them. No words unsaid, no barrier of race or rank. Just two people who had fought for the same truth. Soon after, they were summoned to the council chamber. The hall felt different now, quieter, humbled. The High Counselor Marin sat at the center, his expression unreadable. Fareth stood beside him, no longer defiant, his armor scratched and dulled. Marin's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have done what no one dared, human. You exposed deceit within our own ranks. For that we are in your debt." Aaron bowed his head slightly. "I didn't do it for a debt. I did it because lies destroy everything they touch." The counselor looked at Lyra. "And you, Lyra of the 3rd Division, you risked exile by standing with an outsider. What drove you to such loyalty?" Lyra's voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "Loyalty to truth. To what is right. He saved my life more than once, and he reminded me what honesty costs." The chamber remained still. Marin leaned forward. "You speak boldly for one so young. Perhaps too boldly." Fareth stepped forward unexpectedly. His voice was low but firm. "No, Counselor. She speaks as one who has seen what courage looks like." Lyra looked at him in surprise. Vareth didn't meet her eyes, but his tone carried regret. "I erased the data under order," he continued. "But I will not hide anymore." The human spoke truth. A murmur spread through the council hall. Marin's jaw tightened. "So be it," he said finally. "The council withdraws its charges against the human engineer Aaron Hayes. The alliance with the Earth fleet will continue." Relief washed through Lyra's chest. Aaron nodded, his voice quiet. "Thank you." As they left the chamber, the air outside felt lighter, almost new. People gathered around, some bowing their heads, some offering small smiles. The tension that had filled the colony seemed to break apart like morning mist. Lyra and Aaron walked through the streets together. The repair drones buzzed overhead, restoring what the storm had damaged. Children peeked from doorways, waving shyly at Aaron. For the first time, no one turned away. At the edge of the colony stood the same observation deck where they had once watched the storms. The sky was bright now, painted in gold and silver light. They stood side by side watching the horizon. Aaron broke the silence. "They're sending new engineers next month. I might be reassigned after that." Her heart tightened. "You're leaving?" "Maybe," he said softly. "But I'll come back if they let me. There's still more work to do here." She looked at him, her voice quiet. "You mean rebuilding the systems?" He smiled. "I meant rebuilding trust." For a moment she couldn't speak. The wind brushed through her hair and she turned away so he wouldn't see her eyes glisten. "My people will remember your name, Aaron Hayes," she said. "You showed them something we had forgotten." He tilted his head. "And what's that?" "That hope is not weakness," she said. "It's strength." He looked at her then, really looked in the way he always did. "You're the strongest person I've met, Lyra." She gave a faint, almost shy smile. "Humans use too many words," he laughed quietly. "Maybe, but sometimes the right words stay forever." They watched the sky for a long time. The storm clouds were gone now, replaced by clear air and faint light that shimmered across the valleys. The sound of the colony below was peaceful. Hammers, voices, laughter. Finally she spoke again, her tone softer than before. "When you first came here, I thought humans were reckless, loud, always reaching for things they didn't understand." He smiled. "And now?" "Now," she said, meeting his eyes, "I think maybe that's what makes you beautiful." Aaron's smile faded into quiet warmth. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." The sun rose higher, spilling gold light over them. The wind was calm and the world around them felt alive again. Lyra looked at the horizon and whispered, almost to herself, "The stars don't seem so far anymore." Aaron followed her gaze. "Maybe because we stopped standing on different sides of them. They stood there until the light touched everything. The storm was gone, the truth was free, and between a human and an alien, something rare and unspoken had begun. Something neither of them could name but both understood. It was not just peace. It was the beginning of something new, a bridge between worlds built from honesty, courage, and the quiet power of two hearts that refused to look away.